Good morning or evening, depending on when you're watching. Welcome to the Fine Kitchen, where we are once again discussing the Parsha. This one, we are talking about the most famous trilogy. No, it's not Star Wars. We're talking about the three Parashas that talk about the Yosef story. Now, I guess some of us are mostly familiar with the plot. We've probably seen the musical. I'm not going to comment on whether Paro was Elvis, or whether Jason Donovan or Philip Schofield were better in the casting of Joseph. Fascinating merging of Ramsey Street and our stories of the Torah. But nevertheless, this is probably one of my favorite Divrei Torah. You know, everyone has a favorite. You have favorites in various areas of life other than student and child. But you have favorite things, favorite chocolate, favorite food, favorite color, favorite football team. This is one of my favorite Divrei Torah. Let me share it with you. It's beautiful. Now, what happens is like this. We are very used to seeing the story from the perspective of people who already know the information, right? In other words, we know that this viceroy who's masquerading as someone who doesn't know the brothers is actually Yosef. So when Yosef reveals himself to the brothers, at the beginning of Vayigash, we're not surprised. We don't think, oh my gosh, it's Yosef, I can't believe it. We know the story, we know what's happening. But the brothers don't. What I'd like to do is revisit the story from the brothers' perspective, and I think you're going to find something very surprising. We're going to be asking the question again and again and again, why did the brothers not realize that it was Yosef? So let's go. There's a bit of family friction in the Yosef household or the Yaakov household. And the brothers do what brothers do. They sell their sibling into slavery. They put him in a pit first. Sibling rivalry, how it happens. Obviously, it's not to be taken at face value. The facts happened, of course. But you have to understand with great people, these things aren't just family bickering. These are deep-seated, idealistic, if you like, premonitions in terms of what is the Jewish people going to be. They felt Yosef was a bad influence. They saw that in previous generations, there'd been one bad egg, so to speak. He couldn't be part of the Jewish people. And in some books, they were arguing about ways in which Moshiach would eventually come. Either way, that's not our point for now. Let's go. They sell him down to Egypt. Eventually, there's a famine in the land of Canaan, and the brothers make their way down to Egypt. When they go down to Egypt, they go through different gates. Why did they enter through different gates? Says Rashi, because A, they don't want to be seen as spies. B, they're fanning out to look for Yosef. They know that Yosef is in Egypt. Why not? It's the capital of the slave trade. They sold him down to Egypt. They're looking for him. They get schlepped into this viceroy character. This viceroy looks very familiar. Just this time he does have a beard. When he left, he didn't have a beard. Now he does have a beard. Beards, okay, they create some difference. I guess the focus is more down there, whereas if you don't have a beard, it's more up here towards your eyes. I get that, but it's such a difference they didn't realize. When I was learning in one of my yeshivas, Or Sameach, I actually had a chavrusa, a learning partner, whose beard was about down to there, like a Moen Ali type of beard, a real beehive, right there. I don't think the camera can actually put it, it's a bit lower. Anyway, one night he shaved off his beard, he didn't tell me. This is a guy I've been learning with for 3 hours every morning for the last, 4 or 5 months. Anyway, he sits opposite me and I didn't recognize him. I'm actually looking for where my guy is. I'm looking around this way, that way, where is my learning partner? When's he going to come? Anyway, it turns out this is him. That was Yitzchak, the guy I was learning with. I didn't realize. So I'm not doubting beards. I'm not doubting the power of a beard to realign the face. But surely they would have one of the brothers would have said, oh, don't I recognize you? You look familiar. Nothing of the sort. Anyway, this viceroy accuses them of being spies, and they respond, no, we're not spies, we're brothers. Now, look, my Mossad career didn't last very long, but there's no contradiction, right? You could be spies and brothers, So what is that what's going on over there? Anyway, the viceroy turns around to them and says, no, hold on a second. If you're really brothers, then prove to me you're brothers. I'm going to let one of you languish in jail, and you go and bring, your other brother who you've just told me about, bring him here. Now, again, what kind of viceroy leaves a potential, takes one potential spy and leaves all the rest to do what they want? That's ridiculous. And nevertheless, they're saying, okay, more than that, why is it a proof if they bring someone off the street and say he's our brother? Firstly, maybe he's not the brother. He's a random guy they've paid. Remember, they had different mothers. They didn't all look alike anyway. Number two, let's say he is their brother. That doesn't prove anything. Maybe they're spies and brothers. Anyway, they bring their brother eventually as the famine gets worse. Benjamin comes down to Egypt. His father's not that happy, but what can you do? Shimon is released from prison. And as one did in ancient Egypt, they got treated to a slap-up meal in the viceroy's house because he wanted to apologize for accusing them of being spies. That sounds a bit odd. He's sitting there, and here the Medrash takes over. Rashi quotes a bit of this. The viceroy sits them in age order, and he looks into his goblet, and he addresses them, mentioning their qualities. He says, Yehuda, you're about kingship. You go and sit over here. Binyamin, you don't have a mother, and I don't have a mother, so come sit next to me. At this point, the brothers think, oh, nothing weird about this. Then he tells them their entire family history until the point where Yosef was sold. And you're thinking, come on, all the clues are here. He looks familiar. You know Yosef is in Egypt. He's telling them the family history. He knows about the family. No one can guess. Eventually, after the goblet gate, hiding the goblet, schlepping them back to Egypt, and they think they've escaped, and they come back. Either way, he turns around and he says, I am Yosef. None of the brothers said, I thought so. I had a bet 10-1 on. It was Yosef. I thought so. No one had a clue. In fact, the Medrash says, not only did they not have a clue, they didn't believe him. They were embarrassed. But what does that mean? I think the understanding is as follows. The problem with the brothers at this stage was that they couldn't lead themselves to believe it would be Yosef, and therefore they never entertained the possibility that it could be Yosef. Because if this was Yosef, that meant that they had been wrong for selling him, because that meant that Yosef's dreams had come true. That meant that they'd lived a lie for the last decade plus, and they'd caused their father pain for no reason whatsoever. And therefore, their cognitive dissonance meant that they couldn't even entertain the possibility that it was Yosef. And therefore, Yosef had to say, I'm Yosef, don't be embarrassed, it was all for the best. But therefore, they didn't even beforehand entertain the possibility. If you can look at it a little bit deeper, they had certain premonitions, they had certain preconceived notions that Yosef was a certain way, and therefore they sold him. The antidote to that was to realize, to expose them to what their subjectivity really was, to what internal bias really was, in as much as the situation was constructed that it was so obvious that it was Yosef, but they didn't realize because their internal biases. We always have biases towards other people. We always have bias towards a situation. One of the key aspects of learning Torah properly, is to be able to get back to a level of objectivity. To be able to say, well, I'm removing myself, ridding myself of my preconceived notions. I'm now going to understand, I'm going to tap into something a little bit more objective, a little bit more refined, a little bit less self-contained within myself, tap into something eternal, tap into wisdom that is beyond me, but something I can assimilate within my brain to develop a more objective and divine way of looking at the world. Shabbat Shalom, we should all be good.